Welcome back to another J. Harris Academy of Police Training Roll Call. I'm Lieutenant Joey Spirlaza. Today we're going to be discussing the specifics of State of New Jersey versus Kevin Boone. It's an Appellate Division published opinion. Specifically, what we're going to focus on is what do we need to understand to see if somebody failed to maintain a lane here in the state of New Jersey. To do that, we're going to look at the Title 39 4-88. 39 4-88 applies to roadways that have been divided into clearly marked lanes for traffic. It provides in Section B that a vehicle shall be driven as nearly as practicable entirely within a single lane and shall not be moved from that lane until the driver has first ascertained that the movement can be made with safety. The provision describes two separate and independent offenses. One for a driver's failure to maintain lane to the extent practicable, and two, the other for changing lanes without ascertaining the safety of the lane change. The state need not establish that the driver's failure to maintain his lane risks the safety of other drivers, finding Section 88B is not limited to circumstances in which the deviation from the lane is demonstrated to be a danger to other drivers. State v. Regis, New Jersey Supreme Court, 2011. Although the detective credibly testified that he saw the Yukon cross over the center line, that fact alone does not establish the violation. Section 88B is not a strict liability offense. The statute requires a driver to maintain his lane as nearly as practicable. A driver must maintain a lane to the extent that a person may reasonably maintain his lane, given the circumstances such as road conditions, weather, vehicle condition, and vehicle size and lane width, and taking into account the skill that a reasonable driver, as opposed to a perfect driver, should have. A stop on a suspected motor vehicle violation is the same as a suspected criminal or quasi-criminal investigation, discussed in New Jersey Supreme Court 2003 case State v. Galata. The officer conducting the stop must have a particularized suspicion based on objective observations that the driver has violated the traffic laws or has engaged in some criminal conduct, which must be based upon the officer's assessment of the totality of the circumstances. The state need prove only that the police lawfully stopped the car, not that it could convict the driver of the motor vehicle offense. The stop must be reasonable and justified by articulable facts. It may not be based on arbitrary police practices or the officer's subjective good faith. Section 88B does not make every crossing of the center line a violation. The officer conducting the stop must have an articulable basis for concluding that the driver failed to adhere to its single lane as nearly as practicable. The lane maintenance statute requires a fact-specific inquiry into the particular circumstances present during the incident in question in order to determine whether the driver could reasonably be expected to maintain a straight course at that time in a vehicle on that roadway. The detective testified that the defendant's Yukon crossed the center line on the Northwest Avenue more than one time, but was not driving erratically. That is all the particulars that the detective offered. He could not say where or how many times the defendant crossed or how far into the other lane he went each time. It was near midnight, dark and raining, little to no traffic. The speed limit was only 25 miles per hour, and the defendant was driving a 15-year-old full-size SUV. There was no testimony about the width of the road or its condition. There is nothing in the record to allow the court to conclude that the detective considered any of those things, or indeed anything other than the defendant crossing the center line in deciding to pull him over. The appellate court did not believe that the defendant's tacit admission that he may have crossed the center line changed the analysis. Crossing the center line, depending on the circumstances, is not necessarily a violation of the statute. Detective did not advise the defendant that he had seen the Yukon cross the line multiple times when the defendant allowed he may have been talking with his passenger and not really paying attention too much. More concerning to the court was detective's explanation for his inability to better describe what he believed to have been the violation. His candid admission that he was distracted while following the Yukon, listening to the police radio, paying attention to his surroundings, other traffic, the weather conditions, what he was going to do. Is this guy going to hurt me? Is this guy going to be polite? Is he going to be cooperative? There was a lot going on. The law is well settled that the suspicion necessary to justify a stop must not only be reasonable, but also particularized. The detective's generalized statements that the Yukon crossed the center line more than once, without any particulars as to where, how many times, over what distance, how extensive the incursion or the effect of the darkness, the rain, the Yukon's size, and the condition of the road on his assessment of the violation was insufficient. The motor vehicle stop conducted in this case did not meet constitutional requirements. The evidence was suppressed. Also discussed in this case, pretextual stops are permitted here in New Jersey. The reason for the stop is because they saw him go to a motel that's known for the distribution of narcotics under surveillance. Also addressed in this case was an exterior canine sniff of the vehicle. This stop was not extended as a result of that canine sniff. It was accomplished in less than 10 minutes to where the canine officer was on scene doing his sniff. So the issue here was specific to the initial violation of the stop. Best practices for us going forward: if you do not have a dash cam, which was the case in this incident, in this case with State versus Kevin Boone, we need to dictate to our body cameras what we're observing, especially when there's a lot going on. That becomes objective documentation that's going to be introduced to the case. When we have statutes like this that aren't just black and white, such as stop sign, you must stop behind that white line. In this case, there's nothing saying that you can't cross over that yellow line to avoid something in the road, etc. So best practices: dictate to your body cam all of the violations, everything that we see, to avoid our evidence being suppressed going forward. Thank you for joining us for this J. Harris Academy of Police Training roll call. I'm looking forward to more. Leave a comment below if there's anything that you want to see us discuss in the future. Stay safe.